She saw her small cat leap upon Robert's face, her little paws scratching furiously at him. Robert screamed, and his brothers Duncan and Lackland started to rush to his side, even as Robert grabbed little Freya and hurled her toward the fireplace. Since he had released her in his vain attempt to protect his face, Mora ran and grabbed the animal. When she saw Murdoch signal with a motion of his head that she should run, she did not hesitate, but Robert still tried to stop her, grabbing her by the wrist and lashing out with a knife. He did not manage to stab her as he had clearly intended, but she knew he had scraped the flesh on her side, for it stung, and she could feel that there was some wetness, telling her that it bled. Breaking free of Robert, she then raced to the door, while his brothers reached his side and clumsily tried to help him. He was screeching as if he had just been gutted. She grabbed the bag she had packed and, while still in motion, shoved Freya inside and kept on running. The moment she espied a good place to hide, she ducked into the bushes and burrowed deep into the brush. Pulling the hood of her cloak up, she nestled down in the undergrowth, all the while praying they would not search too hard for her. The light was fading as the sun began to set, so she also prayed that would produce enough shadow to keep her hidden. Once she was sure they had left, she would begin the long trip to Highland, and the distant relatives her mother had always insisted would help her. Mora was not sure what the Camerons could do to help her, or even if they would accept her word that the crimes Robert tried to hang her with were lies, but she had no other choices. Night descended on Mora Ogilvy like a heavy fog, stealing the light and some of the warmth, and she shivered. She reached into the bag she carried and lightly scratched her cat's ears. The animal licked her hand, and Mora sighed. It had been silly to bring her cat with her. She knew few people would understand, especially if they knew what she had risked to accomplish it. She shifted back, deeper into the bushes she was crouching in. Fear still gnawed at her, but she almost welcomed its sharp teeth, because it kept her alert, something Mora felt sure would help her stay alive. She could not be certain how long her cousins would chase after her, or how hard. Considering how often she had to dart off the road and hide, it would be months before she reached Highland. The way Robert had carried on about his face, she suspected he would insist on someone tending to the wounds soon, and that should delay the hunt for her. There were also a lot of dangers for a woman walking the roads and pathways alone, especially at night. Mora wished she'd been able to grab a horse to flee on, but she had barely gotten herself and her little brother away. Thinking of her little brother, Andrew, made her start to cry, but she hastily wiped the tears away. He was only 7, a surprise child their mother had called him, and he was so smart. He had not argued much when she had told him to run to the woman they fondly called Aunt Maggie and tell her what was happening. Mora just prayed she had not put the woman in danger too. It was time to move on, she decided, as she stood up and closed her bag. The moon was out now, so she had some faint light to see by. It was not as much light as she would like, but she suspected too many rests by the side of the road would be risky. She had already had to duck into the undergrowth of the forest or into the hedgerows several times because she heard someone approaching. Unable to resist, she opened her bag, and her pet immediately stuck her head out, eager to look around. "I am very glad that ye are so small, Miss Freya, as I suspicion I will be carrying ye the whole way." Freya made a small chirping sound as Mora thought hard on where she was going. The clan she sought was a relation of her mother's, but Mora had only met them twice. All she could recall about them was a lot of boys and every shade of red hair. She prayed they recalled her mother, or she could find herself facing a lot of confused and angry men. Shaking her head, she fought to recall how hard her father and mother had worked to make certain she knew how to get to Highland. The moment they had suspected trouble from her uncle's sons, they had begun to speak on where to run to. They had been very adamant about it being the best place for her to run to be safe, so for their sake, she pushed aside her doubts and fears and started walking. When Freya snapped her head around to look behind them, Mora turned and headed into the trees. The cat had proven to be very good at warning her of trouble. Mora listened carefully, but it was several minutes before she heard the sound of a horse approaching. Freya crouched down into the bag, flattened her ears against her head, but made no sound. A single rider came into view astride a magnificent horse. The animal had a white tail, a white mane, and a blaze of white down his face, but the rest of him appeared to be black. In a soft, deep voice, the man spoke idly to the animal, and the way the animal's ears moved made Mora ready to believe that it was actually listening.